Welcome to today's video, folks. There's so many things we do out here in the backyard nursery that we have great success with, and that I love showing you guys all the things that we're propagating and growing. And maybe sometimes in my videos, maybe some of my arbor vitae videos or my blackberry videos, you guys have seen some of this craziness that's growing up behind me here and maybe wondered what in the world is going on. Well, as big and tall and crazy as all this stuff is, this is actually what has turned into a failure story in the backyard nursery, and I want to show you exactly what I mean when I tell you it's turned into a failure. You may wonder why I'm calling this a failure and what in the world you're looking at, but these are dappled willows, and the dappled willows are really cool willow that grows these really long, billowy, waving branches on it. I mean, these things grow 10 or 12 feet tall in a season, and typically when you see these are in the form of something more like a bush or something like a plant that's growing from the ground that has a whole bunch of stems that are growing from the ground. And I decided to take these and see if I could turn them into more like a tree. Like I gave you an example of our Rose of Sharon tree out front that has a single trunk that branches from the top into a tree. Well, this was my experiment with those, seeing if we could do it, seeing if we could pull it off. And we did actually have a little bit of success with this, but what happened is I wound up making these things way too long, these trunks way too long. And what has happened is that they're top heavy and they're leaning way over. Now, we could probably make this work by staking these a little bit better and, pulling them over like this and giving them some added support, but the reality is that they're just too top heavy. And the reason that they're too top heavy is because I made the cuttings, the original stem cuttings here, way too long. So back a little bit earlier in the spring, noticing that these were too tall, I stuck them last year, like 2020, so that'd be 2 full growing seasons ago now. I took some of them, a couple of them, and cut them off to make them a little bit lower, and a couple of them have actually performed a little bit better, and we may be able to salvage a couple of these, but the reality is I'm going to have to cut all of these down and throw them in the brush pile. Now, I could just today go and make them a more acceptable height, but it would take another full growing season, and these things are rooting way too deeply into the ground, so they're going to be hard to dig up, and they'd be even harder to dig up in another year, so we're going to just take it and count it as a loss. These things, in my opinion, are much easier for the backyard grower to grow as a bush instead of a tree. It's entirely possible to do with more care than I've given them, but growing these as a bush that look something more like this is much more doable than trying to turn them into a tree. And by the way, these things are great sellers as bushes. In spring, they are spectacular. They have a green, white, and pink coloration to them, and people will buy and buy and buy these, and I'll show you how to propagate those later on this winter. But I wanted to just come out today and show you something that I thought was going to be awesome that's basically just turned into a huge problem. Sometimes that's life in the nursery. So this was a project that seemed like a good idea, and it probably is a good idea at some point, and I will have success growing these as trees eventually, but these just didn't work out, and I wanted to show you that. Sometimes that happens in the backyard nursery. Thanks for joining me today. I love every single one of y'all, and I'll see y'all on the next one.